The call came at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. "Dad, I have terrible news," Vincent said. "Mom passed away last night. Sudden. The funeral is Friday." I was standing in my London hotel room, the Thames dark below. His voice was calm, too calm, practiced. "She left everything to me, Dad. The house, her accounts, everything. You get nothing." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I smiled. Because at that exact moment, I called Maple Grove Care Center, and they told me the truth. My wife was alive. My son had just lied to my face, and I knew something was very, very wrong. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know where you're watching from. Quick note, this story contains fictional elements to enhance the experience and educational value. All names and settings, if they match real life, are purely coincidental. But the message is entirely true. The call came at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. I was standing by the window of my London hotel room, watching the Thames flow dark and quiet below, when my phone buzzed. The name on the screen stopped me. Cold Vincent. We hadn't spoken in 3 weeks. Not since that last tense visit to Mom's nursing home, where everything felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on why. "Dad?" His voice had that false solemnity that immediately put me on edge. "I have some difficult news." I felt my chest tighten. "What is it?" "Mom passed away last night, peacefully in her sleep." He paused as if waiting for me to break down. But there was something in that pause, a slight hesitation, almost like he was reading from a script. "The funeral is Friday. I've already made the arrangements." I set down my coffee. My hands had gone unsteady. When I was just planning to visit her today. The doctor said it was her heart." Vincent continued, his tone shifting, becoming almost businesslike. "She didn't suffer. That's what matters." Something twisted inside me. In 40 years of marriage, I'd learned to read people. And right now, Vincent didn't sound like a son who just lost his mother. He sounded relieved. "Vincent, I need you to slow down," I said carefully. "Tell me exactly what happened. There's nothing to tell Dad. She's gone. And about Mom's estate, the will is very clear. Everything goes to me. The house, the cottage in Muskoka, her investments, all of it. You get nothing. Don't even think about contesting it." Then he hung up. I stood there in the darkness, phone still pressed to my ear, staring out at the Thames. My mother dead, just like that. And Vincent's first priority was to tell me I was getting nothing. Not, "I'm sorry, Dad." Not, "She went peacefully," just a threat wrapped in legal language. I hung up and immediately did something I'd never done before. I called Maple Grove Care Center directly. A woman answered on the third ring, her voice professional and calm. "Maple Grove Care Center. How can I help you? This is Richard Ashford. I need to speak with someone about my wife, Eleanor Ashford. I just received a call that she passed away last night, and I need to confirm." "One moment, sir." There was a pause. Then, "Mr. Ashford, I'm the night supervisor. I have Mrs. Eleanor Ashford right here in the common room. She's having her evening tea. She's perfectly fine." The words didn't compute at first. I had to make her repeat them. "Your wife is fine, sir." Is there some confusion? Eleanor was alive. She was having tea. She was alive. I thanked the supervisor and hung up, my mind reeling. 3 weeks ago, Eleanor had mentioned wanting to take that trip to Italy we'd always talked about. We'd looked at pictures together. She'd circled dates on the calendar. She'd been sharp engaged, full of plans. So, why would Vincent lie about her death? And more importantly, what was he doing that required her to be dead? I looked at my reflection in the dark window. A man I barely recognized stared back at me. 62 years old, tired, but suddenly very awake. Something was very, very wrong, and I knew I had to find out what. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my London hotel room staring at the ceiling, my mind refusing to quiet. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Vincent's voice on the phone. The calmness, the certainty, the way he'd already decided what happened to Eleanor's money, Eleanor's house, Eleanor's life. At 5 a.m., I called Olivia in Vancouver. She answered on the third ring, her voice immediately alert. "Dad, what's wrong?" I told her everything. The call. Eleanor still alive at Maple Grove. Vincent claiming he'd inherited everything. "That's elder abuse," Olivia said quietly. "That's fraud, Dad. We need to go to the police." "I know, but I need proof first. Evidence." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, steady but hollow. "I need to know what he's been doing." "You need a lawyer." Olivia said. And maybe a private investigator, someone who can document everything before Vincent covers his tracks. I called David Mitchell, a lawyer I knew from work. He answered after the second ring, and I explained the situation in rapid clipped sentences. Eleanor's sudden death, the suspicious inheritance, the impossible timing. Richard, David said, his tone shifting to something sharper. If your son has power of attorney and is misrepresenting your wife's condition, that's serious. We need evidence, financial records, medical documentation, testimony. You need to hire a private investigator immediately. Don't wait. How long would that take? 48 hours, maybe less, but you need to act now. I hung up and opened my laptop. It took 20 minutes to find Laura Henderson's website. Private investigator, 30 years experience, specialized in elder fraud cases. Her phone number was listed. When Laura answered, I didn't hesitate. I need you to investigate my son. He may have stolen money from my wife's accounts. He may have done worse. I can start immediately, she said. I'll need 48 hours to gather solid evidence. Account numbers, access credentials, if you have them, his address, workplace habits. You'll have everything by morning. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my hotel room and thought about Vincent asking for money 3 weeks ago. Dad, I need help. I'm in trouble. I'd said no. I'd told him to figure it out himself. I'd been disappointed in him, angry at his irresponsibility. Now I understood. He hadn't needed help. He'd needed access. By the time the sun rose over London, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to sit in this hotel room and wait for answers. I wasn't going to let Vincent have time to cover his tracks or move money or fabricate more lies. I was going home. I booked a flight for 10 a.m. and started packing. The flight was 12 hours. 12 hours of altitude clouds and nothing but time to think. I sat in seat 12C window seat, watching the Atlantic fade beneath the wing. My phone was in airplane mode, but the moment we reached cruising altitude, I'd turned it back on. The cabin crew didn't notice. Nobody ever does at 30,000 feet when everyone's staring at their screens or trying to sleep. Laura Henderson answered on the second ring. Mr. Ashford, you said it was urgent. I hadn't expected her to pick up so fast. It was past midnight in Toronto, but private investigators don't keep 9 to 5 hours. My son, I said, quietly aware of the couple sleeping 2 seats over. I need you to investigate him. His name is Vincent Ashford. He's 32 years old, lives in Toronto. Real estate management. I believe he may have stolen money from my wife's accounts. And there's more, much more, but I don't have all the details yet. There was a pause. Professional, measured. And I can start immediately, Laura said. But I'll need 48 hours to gather solid evidence. What's your timeline? I land in Toronto tomorrow afternoon. By evening, I need to know enough to confront him. That's tight, but not impossible. Send me everything you have, account numbers, access credentials, if you have them, his address, workplace habits, photos. I'll work through the night. I promised I would. After I hung up, I sat back and watched the wing lights blink against the darkness. 12 hours. That's what I'd told myself when I bought the ticket. 12 hours to figure out what to say to my son, what to ask him, how to accuse him without losing him completely. But as the night deepened and the cabin grew quiet, I realized I'd never figure that out. Some conversations don't have a script. By the time we began our descent into Toronto, the afternoon sun was gold and low. The city sprawled beneath us, highways, suburbs, the glint of Lake Ontario. I'd lived here for 40 years. I knew its rhythm, its seasons. I knew where Vincent lived. I knew the nursing home where Eleanor was having lunch when I'd called them from London. Eleanor was alive. That fact sat with me like a stone. At the airport, I rented a car. The drive to the hotel took 30 minutes through rush hour traffic. At the Marriott, I showered for the first time since London. 40 hours, 2 continents a lifetime, compressed into the minutes it took for hot water to wash the staleness away. I changed into fresh clothes, dark jeans, a blue button-down. Nothing that said angry father, everything that said I'm calm, I'm collected, I'm not here to fight. It was a lie, of course. I was here to fight. I just needed Vincent to believe otherwise. By evening, I was sitting on the edge of my hotel bed, phone in hand. The cursor blinked in the compose field. I could call him. Vincent, I'm back in town. Let's grab dinner. Something casual, something that wouldn't spook him. But I didn't type it. Instead, I set the phone down. No warning, no call. No chance for him to prepare his story. Smooth out the wrinkles, decide which lie to tell. I was going to show up at his door, unannounced. And the moment he opened it, I was going to look into his eyes and see if what I suspected was true. Because Vincent had never been a good liar, not to me, not when it mattered. I picked up my keys. The evening was cool, and the drive to his neighborhood would take 20 minutes. It was time. I drove to Vincent's house as the sun dropped toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gray. The trees were casting long shadows across the quiet street. I didn't call ahead. I didn't text. I just showed up. When Vincent opened the door, the color drained from his face. "Dad!" His voice cracked. How are you back already? Can I come in?" He hesitated for just a moment too long. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Then he stepped aside, and I walked into the foyer of his house, the house that, according to him, now belonged entirely to him, thanks to Eleanor's will. The living room was exactly as I remembered it. Expensive furniture, modern art on the walls, the kind of place Vincent had always wanted, but could never quite afford. Or so I'd thought. "Vincent," I said, not bothering with small talk. "I just flew in from London. This morning something happened that confused me, so I made a phone call." He was standing in the middle of the room, now his arms crossed defensively. "Dad, I can explain. I called Maple Grove Care Center," I continued. "Your mother's nursing home. I spoke to them this morning. Do you know what they told me?" Vincent's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. "They said your mother is fine. They said she was having breakfast. Eleanor is alive, Vincent. So maybe you can explain to me why you called me last night and told me she was dead." For a moment, Vincent's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Then he tried, "Dad, she has good days and bad days. When I called you, she was having a really bad episode. I genuinely thought, you thought what?" I stepped closer. "You thought she was dying, so you decided to call her son on the other side of the world and tell him she was dead. You didn't call an ambulance. You didn't call her doctor. You called me and told me she was gone. I was confused. No." My voice was quiet now, which somehow made it harder. "No, you weren't confused." That's when Amanda walked in from the kitchen. She stopped dead when she saw me. Her eyes moved from me to Vincent and back again. She'd heard enough. I could see it in her face, that moment of realization, the instant when doubt takes root and starts to grow. Amanda had always been kind to me. She'd always treated me like a real father-in-law, not an obligation. But right now, looking at Vincent, I could see her starting to question everything. "What's going on?" she asked quietly. Vincent turned to her, panic flashing across his features. "Nothing. It's nothing. Just a misunderstanding. Your husband told me your mother died yesterday," I said, holding Amanda's gaze. "But she's alive. She's at the nursing home having breakfast this morning, so I came to ask him why." Amanda's face hardened. She looked at Vincent differently now. The trust that had been there just seconds before was fracturing. "Vincent." Her voice was careful, controlled, dangerous. He didn't answer her. Instead, he turned back to me. "Hey, Dad, can we talk about this another time? It's late. The nursing home's visiting hours are over for the day. We can go tomorrow morning, and you can see for yourself that Mom is—" "No." I moved toward the door. "We're going now. Dad, it's nearly 8 o'clock. The facility won't even let us in. Now, Vincent." Something in my tone made it clear there was no negotiation here. I wasn't asking, I was telling. And in that moment, as Vincent realized he could no longer control this situation, as he understood that his lie had been exposed and his carefully constructed story was unraveling, his face told me everything. He'd been caught, and he knew there was no way out. That evening, I drove straight to Maple Grove Care Center. I didn't wait for visiting hours or call ahead. I just showed up at the reception desk at 7:15 p.m., walked in with the kind of authority that comes from being a frightened father, and asked to see my wife. The receptionist hesitated. "I'll have to check with Beverly. Visiting hours are technically over." "Get Beverly," I said. "Now." Beverly Prescott appeared 5 minutes later. She was a woman in her mid-50s with the careful demeanor of someone who had learned to manage difficult situations. But when she saw me, I watched her face change. She knew. Something in her eyes told me she already knew why I was there. "Mr. Ashford," she said carefully, "Eleanor is resting right now. Perhaps it would be better if you came back tomorrow morning when—" "I'm seeing her now," I said. "Take me to her room." She didn't argue. Beverly led me down a hallway with soft lighting and the faint smell of antiseptic and something floral. Eleanor's room was at the end of the corridor. When I opened the door, my breath caught. Eleanor was asleep, Not the kind of sleep where you drift off after a long day. This was something else. Her body was slack against the pillows, her breathing shallow and labored. Her hand lay limply on top of the blanket. "Eleanor," I said quietly. "Eleanor, sweetheart." Nothing. I moved closer and touched her shoulder gently. "Eleanor." Her eyes didn't flutter. Her breathing didn't change. It was like trying to wake someone from the depths of a drugged sleep. On the nightstand beside a glass of water and a paperback book sat a small amber prescription bottle. I picked it up. The label read, "Sedative, Eleanor Ashford, Dr. Wallace Sterling, take as directed." My stomach dropped. "Beverly!" I called out. She was still standing in the doorway, her posture rigid. "Who is Dr. Wallace Sterling?" She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was carefully neutral. "He's Eleanor's physician. He came highly recommended." "By whom? Your son?" Beverly said quietly. "Vincent recommended him. He said your wife needed a specialist in advanced dementia care." I held up the bottle. "And did you verify his credentials?" Beverly's face went pale. She glanced down the hallway, then back at me. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "We tried Mr. Ashford. We attempted to verify his medical license through the state system. His name, it doesn't appear in the registry." The room seemed to tilt. "It doesn't appear. We've been trying to contact him about it, but he's been difficult to reach. And Vincent was very insistent that his mother needed this medication, that it would help her rest, that it was all completely legitimate. He was very convincing." I set the bottle down carefully on the nightstand, as if it might explode if I dropped it. My hands were shaking. "Beverly, if this doctor doesn't exist and my wife is being given sedatives without proper medical supervision." "I understand your concern," Beverly said, but there was something else in her voice now. Not just concern, fear. I pulled out my phone and called David Mitchell. He answered on the second ring. "Richard, what's happened?" I explained. The fake doctor, the sedatives Eleanor, sleeping too deeply, the bottle with a non-existent physician's name. David's response was immediate. "Richard, this is serious. If that medication wasn't prescribed by a licensed physician and Eleanor has been given it without proper medical oversight, this constitutes elder abuse. You need to call the police. Now. I'm calling them right now." My hands trembled as I dialed. The 911 operator was calm and professional as I reported what I'd found. No, Eleanor wasn't in immediate danger. She was breathing, her vital signs seemed stable. But yes, there were unauthorized medications. Yes, a fake doctor. Yes, I needed officers at Maple Grove Care Center as soon as possible. When I hung up the phone, I turned back to look at Eleanor. My wife. My beautiful, vibrant wife, who had been planning a trip to Italy just months ago. Now she was asleep in a nursing home, sedated by a non-existent doctor on the orders of her own son. The anger and fear warred inside me. That's when I heard a soft knock on the doorframe. I turned to find a young woman in scrubs standing in the doorway. She had kind eyes, but there was something purposeful about her expression. Her name tag read Dorothy Finch, RN. "Mr. Ashford," she said quietly, glancing down the hallway behind her. "I need to talk to you, and not here. If you're still watching until now, comment number 1, so I know you're walking this journey with me. Because what happens next, the evidence I'm about to share will shock you. And a note. The next part contains details that will change everything I thought I knew about my son. If you're not ready, you can stop here." Dorothy led me away from Eleanor's room, down a narrow corridor toward the back of the facility. She kept glancing over her shoulder, her jaw tight. When we reached a small break room near the staff area, she looked both ways down the hallway before closing the door quietly behind us. "What I'm about to tell you," she said, keeping her voice low, "could cost me my job, but I can't stay silent anymore." I waited. The fluorescent lights hummed above us. "I work with a private investigator named Laura Henderson," Dorothy continued. "She reached out to me about 3 weeks ago. She asked me to document everything your son has been doing here. Everything." My chest tightened. "You've been helping, Laura." "I've been helping you," Dorothy said firmly. "Vincent has visited your wife 3 times in the past 2 weeks. And each time he's met with this man claiming to be Dr. Wallace Sterling. Each time he's requested higher doses of the sedative." Dorothy pulled out her phone. Her hands were trembling slightly as she unlocked it and found a video file. "I recorded this 2 days ago." She pressed play. The video was grainy, filmed from what looked like a high shelf or a camera hidden in the corner of a room. but the audio was crystal clear. I could see Vincent standing with a man in a white coat, the fake doctor. They were speaking in low voices, but every word was audible. How long until she... Vincent paused, searching for the words. How long until she stops resisting the medication? Dr. Sterling checks something on a clipboard. With the increased dosage, she'll sleep deeper. Within a few days, she'll be completely unresponsive. And there's no way to trace it back to me. Not if we're careful, Sterling said. The sedative is common. The increased dose could be attributed to natural progression of her condition. Once she's in a deep enough state, a fall, a seizure, a heart attack, any of these things could happen. And no one would question it. I felt the room spin. Dorothy stopped the video. There's more, but I think you've heard enough. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. What I had just witnessed wasn't a conversation between a doctor and a family member concerned about his mother's well-being. It was the cold, calculated planning of a murder. Mr. Ashford, Dorothy said quietly, I believe your son is planning to make your wife disappear. Not just sedate her, make her disappear permanently. Once she's in a coma deep enough, he'll stage an accident or claim natural causes. No one will perform an autopsy on an elderly woman in a nursing home. No one will question it. We have to get her out of here, I said, my voice hoarse. Tonight? Now? We will, Dorothy assured me. Within the next hour, I'll have Eleanor moved to a private room with round-the-clock supervision. No one will have access to her except authorized medical staff. The police will arrive at dawn, and your son has a habit. What habit? He visits early, every morning around 6:30 or 6:45 a.m. before he goes to work. He checks on his mother, or at least that's what he tells people he's doing. Tomorrow morning he'll arrive, expecting to find a heavily sedated woman he can easily dispose of. Dorothy's eyes were hard now. Instead, he'll find police officers waiting for him. I looked at the phone still in her hand at the frozen image of Vincent on the screen. My son. A man I had raised, educated, supported. A man planning to murder his own mother for money. Thank you, I whispered. It seemed inadequate, but it was all I could manage. Don't thank me yet, Dorothy said. Tomorrow morning, when the sun comes up, we end this. We end him. She glanced at her watch. Eleanor will be moved in 10 minutes. The police have been alerted. Everything is in motion now, Mr. Ashford. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. Go back to your hotel, Dorothy said. Get some rest if you can. Tomorrow your son's world comes apart, and your wife gets her life back. As I left the break room and walked back down the hallway past Eleanor's door, past the reception desk, and out into the cool Toronto night, only one thought occupied my mind. Tomorrow. Everything changes. The next morning arrived cold and gray. I hadn't slept. I'd spent the night in Eleanor's new room, watching her breathe, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest, grateful beyond words that she was alive. Officer Shelton had stayed nearby. By 6:30 a.m., we were all in position. At 6:55 a.m., Vincent walked through the front doors of Maple Grove Care Center. He moved with the casual confidence of a man who believed he was still in control. He had no idea what was waiting for him, no idea that everything had unraveled, no idea that the woman he'd poisoned was already waking up, and that the police were standing 3 feet away from her room. Officer Robert Fletcher stepped out from around the corner. Vincent Ashford. He said, his voice calm but authoritative. For a moment, Vincent froze. I could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, the realization, the panic. I need you to come with me, Officer Fletcher continued. Vincent's face went white, and then he ran. He bolted toward the nearest exit, but Officer Shelton was already moving to cut him off. In his desperation, Vincent's hand shot out toward a corner where maintenance supplies were kept. His fingers closed around a metal rod, thin, sharp-edged. A walking aid that shouldn't have been left unattended. He spun around the rod, raised, and charged directly at me. You ruined everything, he screamed. I sidestepped my body, moving on instinct. The rod whistled past my ear close enough that I felt the air displacement. I grabbed his wrist, trying to wrest the metal away from him, but Vincent was wild with panic, stronger than I'd expected. We struggled for a moment, his desperation against my determination to protect what remained of my family. Officer Fletcher didn't hesitate. He moved in with practiced efficiency, grabbing Vincent from behind and driving him toward the ground. The metal rod clattered away across the tile floor. For a brief moment, there was a tangle of bodies and shouts, but it was over almost as quickly as it began. Within seconds, Vincent was on his stomach, hands behind his back. Officer Shelton securing the handcuffs with a definitive click. I stepped back, breathing hard. My left arm throbbed where Vincent had twisted it during the struggle. Not serious, not life-threatening. Just a reminder that the man I had raised was capable of violence I'd never imagined. Officer Shelton immediately moved to Eleanor's room to check on her. I followed, my heart pounding. Eleanor was sitting up in bed, her eyes clearer than they'd been in days. As she saw Vincent being led past the doorway, her expression crumbled. She began to cry, not tears of fear, but tears of heartbreak for a son who had become a stranger. "Mom, Vincent tried, but Officer Fletcher was already guiding him away. Officer Fletcher turned back to me, his hand resting on Vincent's shoulder. "Mr. Ashford, your son is under arrest for elder abuse fraud theft over $5,000 and attempted murder." His voice was formal, official, final. Vincent began to sob. "She's my mother." I needed the money I needed. But his pleas dissolved into the sound of his own desperation as they led him toward the elevator. I stood in the doorway of Eleanor's room, watching my son disappear. Eleanor reached out and took my hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving me." I squeezed her fingers gently, unable to speak. As Vincent was led away in handcuffs, a thought settled into my chest like a stone. He was my son. I had raised him, taught him, believed in him. But I had also stopped him. I had chosen my wife over my child, and in doing so, I had severed something that could never be fully repaired. That choice would echo through the rest of our lives. Eleanor's recovery was slow. The sedatives lingered in her system for weeks, and as the fog lifted, memories returned, pieces of betrayal she couldn't unsee. I would find her staring out the window, her hands trembling. The trial began 4 weeks after Vincent's arrest. The courthouse was cold and formal. David Mitchell represented Eleanor with quiet precision. Vincent sat at the defense table in an orange prison jumpsuit, looking smaller than I remembered. Dorothy Finch testified first. She played the video recording, Vincent's calm voice asking Dr. Sterling how long it would take for Eleanor to stop resisting the medication. She played the audio where Sterling explained the plan, increased dosages, deep sleep stage accidents no one would question. The courtroom went silent. The jury's faces darkened. Beverly Prescott followed her voice, shaking as she described how Vincent had pressured her, implied threats to the facility's license. She had been trapped, forced to cooperate with a fake doctor. By the end, it was clear she was a victim too. Amanda Richardson testified about the financial trail. She walked the jury through Vincent's desperation, his debts, his bankruptcy, his casual mentions of his mother's inheritance as if Eleanor were already dead. When she finished, her eyes were red. The verdict came on Thursday, guilty on all counts: elder abuse, theft, fraud, attempted murder, 8 years in prison. The judge's gavel fell like a period at the end of a sentence that should have ended long before. Eleanor's assets were restored. The $280,000 Vincent had stolen was returned. The fake will was nullified. Justice in its slow way had been served. But something inside me remained unsettled. Amanda filed for divorce the following week. But instead of disappearing, she became a constant presence in our lives. She visited Eleanor twice a week, brought flowers, sat with her in the garden. There was something redemptive in Amanda's presence, a young woman who had seen the worst of Vincent, but who chose to honor the woman who had raised him anyway. Olivia flew back from Vancouver and stayed for 2 weeks. She held, her mother helped her navigate the emotional aftermath, and simply sat with us in the evenings. The 3 of us were fractured, but we were together. The justice system had done its job. Vincent would spend 8 years thinking about what he'd done. Eleanor would have time to heal. Our family had survived, yet I found no peace in it. 3 weeks after the verdict, a letter arrived, plain envelope. My name written in Vincent's handwriting, the same handwriting I had known since 3rd grade. I stared at it for a long time. Eleanor watched from across the room. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. I walked to the kitchen sink, held the envelope over the drain, and set it on fire. The paper curled and blackened. The flames consumed his words without me ever reading them. I watched until nothing remained but ash, then washed it down the drain. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what he might have written. An apology, a plea, an explanation. The not knowing was somehow worse than any answer could have been. Because in not reading it, I had made a choice. I had decided that whatever Vincent had to say, it didn't matter. I had erased his voice before he could speak, and yet I couldn't stop wondering what he'd tried to tell me. 6 months after Vincent was sentenced, Eleanor and I sat in the living room as evening light faded. We didn't talk much anymore. There was a distance between us, not anger, but something unresolved. And I understood with sudden clarity that the distance was because of me. I had refused every letter, every message Vincent sent from prison. I had made my choice clear. My son was dead to me. Then Olivia came home. She walked in one afternoon and sat across from me. "Dad, I visited Vincent in prison yesterday." My jaw tightened. "What did you do?" "He's my uncle," she said calmly. "He's suffering, and he knows what he did was wrong." "He tried to kill your mother." "I know," Olivia leaned forward. "But you taught me that family is everything, that we don't abandon people even when they hurt us." I stood up, anger rising. "Olivia, you have no idea." "I read the trial transcripts," she interrupted. "I understand how serious it was. But people can change. Everyone deserves a chance." Before I could respond, Eleanor appeared in the doorway. "Olivia is right," she said simply. I turned to her. "Eleanor, he was going to kill you." "I know." She sat beside me. "Richard, I think we need to consider forgiveness." Forgiveness? The word felt impossible. "After everything, not forgetting," Eleanor said firmly. "Not excusing what he did, but real forgiveness, Richard, for him and for us." I stood and walked out without speaking. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in darkness thinking about Eleanor's words. How could I forgive someone who tried to murder my wife? How could I forgive the lies, the theft, the calculated coldness? But as hours passed, another thought took shape. The anger I carried wasn't just about Vincent anymore. It was about me. It was about the man I thought I was, the protector, the one who delivers justice. And it was about the man I was becoming, someone so consumed by rage that he couldn't hear his daughter's compassion or his wife's wisdom. The hardest battle was not against Vincent. It was against myself, against the man I believed I was and the man I was becoming. Against the refusal to acknowledge that holding on to anger was slowly poisoning everything: my marriage, my relationship with Olivia, my own soul. I didn't know if I could forgive Vincent. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But lying there in the darkness, I knew I couldn't go on like this either. Something had to change, and that something was me. I am Richard Ashford. I lived through a battle not with my son, but with myself. If you are a father or parent seeking family stories that matter, I want to tell you, don't be like me. Don't let anger destroy love. I believed protecting family was everything, but I forgot that forgiveness is not weakness, it is strength. The lesson from my family stories is simple. Family is built by choosing each other every day. These family stories show us that God taught us to love our enemies. God taught us to forgive 70 times 7. Grandpa's stories like this one remind us that forgiveness is a journey, not perfection. I am still learning to forgive one day at a time, just like the grandpa stories my father once shared with me. Thank you for staying with me. Please comment. In these family stories, what would you do in Richard's position? Do you believe grandpa's stories and forgiveness can heal family wounds? So, I know you walk this journey with me. And a disclaimer. The next story contains fictional elements for educational purposes. If you prefer not to watch, please exit and choose content that better suits you.